Good evening. Welcome to the April 9th meeting of the Grafton Board of Selectmen. First item on our agenda is announcements. First announcement is on April 24th. The library will be relocating to 53 North Main Street, formerly St. Andrew's Church. The library will be closed between April 24th and May 13th. Patrons may use C/W Mars libraries for hold pickups. The digital collection will remain available for leisure reading, research, and homework needs. The hours at the temporary location starting May 13th will remain the same and is expected to last 16 to 18 months. On April 18th, here in Conference Room A, the Town Administrator will be hosting the second of 3 outreach meetings. All are welcome to attend. This is a great time to ask questions. All are welcome. The third meeting will be on April 25th at the Nelson Library on Prentice Street. And lastly, the Opening Day Little League Parade will be held on Sunday, April 28th. The parade will begin at the South Grafton Elementary School and proceed to the Ferry Street Complex where Opening Day ceremonies will take place.
I have a question. Do you know when the Easter egg hunt is at the library?
It's April 13th, so it's a Saturday at 10 o'clock, and then there's one at 11:30.
Yeah, there's two. There's one early and one late.
Okay,
Yep.
and tickets can be gotten at the library.
At the library.
At the library. I think the 10 o'clock is sold out, but the 11:30 is still available.
Awesome.
All right, first item on our agenda, we have these touch base meetings with all our committees, and one of them is the Agricultural Commission. You want to come on up and kind of just...
Is it okay if I use this?
Perfect.
Yep.
Just introduce yourself, everybody. And
Sure. I'm Daniela Sharma. I am co-chair of the Agricultural Commission for the town of Grafton. And I'm happy to say that though the past year was a little challenging in terms of membership, we had several of our members decide that they could not continue with the commission and resigned. And so we were a little bit stuck with in terms of meeting quorum at our meetings. But we do have now we have a set full 5 commission with a new member coming on board, so we're very excited. And his name is Bruce Teixeira, so we're excited for him to bring his expertise and his enthusiasm for the commission. We did have some interesting calls from residents to the commission about things of a planning nature and how it affects their use of their land and the animals on their land. More calls for people very interested in raising chickens, so that is coming up again. And thankfully, we do have bylaws very specifically for raising of chickens. But I do see in the future that we're going to have more of an impact in terms of helping people bridge the gap between what they can do with their land and their animals, and how we work with the planning board or the environmental commission. So we're excited to do that. We are also looking forward to having a stronger relationship with the Farm Bureau and events and grants that they may be promoting at that time.
all right. That's great. Anybody have any questions for Daniela?
So, do you guys meet on a regular basis, or is it as needed?
We usually meet every month, and it's usually a Wednesday or Thursday evening. Our biggest problem, I would say, in the last year was we had so many members leaving that a lot of times we would not have quorum. Right. We did discuss things in a very general way, but there was nothing official we could do.
What's the charge of the Agricultural Commission?
The charge of the Agricultural Commission is basically we are representing anything with respect to any farm or nursery or related agricultural communities and processes within the town of Grafton. And one of our biggest goals is to how to deal with that in the future, while maintaining the traditions and the feel of Grafton. And it's one of the unique things about Grafton is it still retains its agricultural roots, and it is a draw for people. And so we're trying to bridge that, keeping our traditions alive, but also realizing that farming in the future is going to be very different.
And how many members do you guys have now?
Right now we have 5. With
And,
Bruce coming on board, we have 5.
and you can have up to how many?
We can have 5 is our regular board.
Okay.
We can have advisors. So we are going to, at our next meeting, we're going to look into whether or not we want to have a specific advisor, someone to serve as an advisory member too, to help us along.
Perfect. That kind of saying all this as a plug. So if anybody's interested
Thanks.
in joining the Agricultural Commission, they do have room.
Yeah, thank you, appreciate it.
No problem.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Anybody else for
Can I
Danielle?
just ask one thing? 3 years ago, we were considering a right to farm designation.
Yes,
Is that
yes.
still on the table?
That is
Thought
still
about?
is still on the table, and that is actually going to be our topic on the next meeting when we have our full new
Yeah.
commission. That we are going to look to revitalize that, because if I remember correctly, we missed it by that much. So we think that there is a lot of public support for it, but we were a bit clumsy in our presentation of it. So we're going to remedy that and bring that up again.
So maybe October.
Maybe October.
All
Yeah.
right, well, just
yeah.
keep us posted. We'll just want to keep the
Yes.
agenda
Yes.
open for town.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
evening.
All right, up next we have the Community Preservation Committee. If you guys want to come, you guys can all come up. We don't bite.
Me too. Just teasing. I feel like I should go sit with them.
Right?
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Good evening. How's it going?
Good.
So, we just want to have you guys in and kind of tell us a little bit about what you guys been working on this year and how the committee's going, and maybe even talk about community preservation funds, because I know the Grafton News had an article up on the Facebook page about the common historical Grafton Common Improvement Plan. A lot of people were concerned, saying, where's the money coming from? And I don't think they quite understand it. So maybe just kind of give us a review and let us know where you're at.
Ken can speak to the budget because we have,
Why don't you speak to the projects, then I'll speak to the budget.
okay, for this town meeting, we have several projects, but 1 or 2 that are quite large. One of them is the Robinson property, and I think we're gonna be
That's next.
the
on
ones that
agenda.
are paying for it. So that's one. And then the other large project is the Common. Both of these are gonna be using funds that we have on hand. We're not bonding. There's sufficient funds. We also have several smaller, grants too for the Historical Commission. One is to update the, survey and planning, document that has all the historic, and architectural resources, archaeological resources. And then also to restore the old weights and measures, the cabinet and the weights themselves that are currently in the custodian's closet, I guess, here in the municipal building.
I'll just go back just in general. I am also a member of the Community Preservation Committee. And we, just in general for people to know that the Community Preservation Act is a surcharge on our taxes, and the money is set aside for specific projects. Open space, recreation, historical preservation, and affordable housing. So this Community Preservation Committee, looks at projects that come in and see if they fit into one of those 4 designations, and to see if they go along with what the state law says that the money can be spent on. And so when somebody asks where the money's coming from, we have been collecting money for a while. We haven't had any big projects in a while. And again, this money can only be spent in those 4 areas. So as John was describing those projects, those are
Another large,
projects that,
It's
You
not
can
really a
use them on-
project, it's a transfer. Is it 67? How much we
Which is that?
transferring to affordable housing?
Affordable housing,
I think it's 54 and then
52,000.
52, which is, for us, that's pretty big. Usually they're 10, 15,000, but, we get large ones as well. But every year we transfer, or the 10% set aside, we have to have of the funds collected through the 1.5% surcharge and the state match, which is anywhere from 15 to 25% now. It used to be 100%, and it's gradually gone down.
I was just going to ask that. How has the state match been the last couple of years?
It's been low.
Okay.
It's, last year it was 19%, and that's been about average. The projection for this year is down to 11%, or 12%, although it seems to always been higher than the estimates have been. And so maybe it'll be a little bit more than that, but it's definitely down from the 100% that it was back in the beginning of the act, when the act was first
Is
passed.
that because more towns are implementing it?
Yes, more towns are implementing it. Also, the funding stream is from primarily from real estate recording fees. And in 2008, we all know what happened then, and the funding source dropped dramatically in 2008, and it's only been coming back up. And as it's been coming back up due to the economic improvements, there are more and more larger and larger towns that have passed the act. So there's there's more towns to spread the money to.
And
There
also,
is-
I'm sorry, I was gonna say the 3%, you can choose a 3% surcharge. Our town voted on a 1.5. So those towns with the 3% surcharge, they get priority.
They get
plus
more,
additional rounds of funding that can come about. There's also efforts at the state level to try and get that state match solidified more so that it would go back to a higher amount and they wouldn't have to petition every year and vote for it. So I know the last couple of years they've been trying to do that, and they've hired a firm to help with them, and they feel pretty upbeat from the last report that we got from them that could go through.
But nevertheless, the town has been has had some notable large projects in the past. Some that included large cash grants and bond issues. But both bonds now are receding into the past. I think the Pell Farm bond is now at payment number 11 out of 20, and the One Grafton Common is also I don't know. The number's in the warrant, but it's
I think it's 6.
it must. I think it's like number 6 or number 7 out of 20. So years are passing, and the bonds are getting paid off. And that's a
and
good
Anita
thing.
actually was we able to, I don't know, refloat the bonds and got a better rate, so.
And so, in the past, 5 or so years, there haven't been many projects that have come before the committee for grants, and the money that the surcharge and the state grant that we are getting has been accumulating, and it has gotten to at the end of this fiscal year, it'll be at about $1,230,000. But that's a good thing because it's fortuitous because just this this period right now, a number of larger 2 larger projects that are both right down that are perfect matches for these funds have come to the committee, and we have the fortunate position to be able to have the money accumulated to pay for them. So the money that has been accumulated for these purposes is now able to be used for these purposes. So there's no new taxes required. It's just the money that's been accumulating is now going to be used for the purposes for which it's been accumulated.
That's great.
We're also in the process of getting an RFP out to hire a consultant to update our community preservation plan, which will help us be more forward-thinking, more proactive rather than reactive, because up until now, our grants have been, we react to people that ask for funds. And so in the future, looking at the consultant will look at what other communities do, try to find the best, the ways for the applications are submitted, to the way everything is handled internally. Joanne Duncan has been a godsend. She's been working 6 months. How long? Every day I wake up and I say, thank you. Thank you. She's been such a big help. But to work with Joanne and to get a more streamlined process, but also to look more broadly, what do we want to do in town, working with the open space plan, which I think we funded that, and that's going to be finished relatively soon, our recreation, all those plans, with the new document that's coming from Mass Historical with that grant, for the historical piece, to try to see what is out there that we still need to do, what we want to do to try to get priorities. We have 2 hearings a year to try to get people to attend those hearings, to say this is what we want, for people to advocate for things that they're interested in the community. Recreation has been using CPC more and more in the last couple of years. Jen has taken on a few projects for Silver Lake Beach. So trying to have all those things, looking at what our pie is, what our priorities are, and then to work within that.
The money, someone had asked me earlier and I didn't have the answer. The money that was allocated for Super Park, was that,
It went back.
it went back, it had sunset, right? So these projects have sunsets on them that if, it's proposed and the money's allocated, that if they don't get finished, the money comes back to the account, right?
Right.
All right,
That
that's what I
all
thought,
of the
but
projects
I wasn't 100%.
that we have a sunset with the exception of one.
In the early days,
the very
there were
first
no
one.
sunsets.
And it's Roger Holman's baby that I'm still not being a very good steward of to try to get it done. But that way automatically it's off the books. We don't have to carry it unless they say we need more time, which we've done with projects. If they need more time, even if it's a month or two, legally you have to have all the bills have to be in by a certain time or we cannot spend the funds. So, but we're very flexible with that. We just have to go to town meeting and just have an extension. And we've never had any of those, had a problem with any of those being approved at town meeting.
Are you noticing over the past couple of years more or less people coming to you with proposals? Applicants,
Not
anyways.
necessarily more, because it's sometimes we have none, and it's mostly our housekeeping articles that we have for town meeting. But we're getting larger requests, and in the last year, several large requests. So, but we, again, if we're building up the reserve, we're building up the fund so that we have money available to fund these projects, and that's kind of the way it's gone. And I would personally like to see us looking at what we'd like to do rather than kind of spending the money because it's there, setting priorities and saying, on a scale of 1 to 10, where is this on our priority? Even if we have the money, because we've always approved projects, I think it's a rare exception that we have not approved projects.
Well, I think a lot of times, you have to understand the act a little bit, and we still have to contact the coalition and ask specific questions like, does this fit in? And sometimes things just don't fit into the kind of the feel of the act. This money is really for things that wouldn't be able to be done otherwise in town. They're kind of like these extras that are very specific to open space and historic preservation
And maintenance is always a tricky issue
maintenance.
with a
Can't
lot
do
of these
maintenance.
projects because depending on what you're doing, it's getting enveloped with the project, so it's not maintenance, it's part of an overall rehab. But if you just say, okay, we need to put a new roof on, that's not gonna fly. Even if it's a historic building, you've gotta build it into a larger project so that it's not maintenance.
One very recent project that we funded is the Stone Arch Bridge. Very visible, so that was a larger one that wouldn't have happened without CPA funds. The town wasn't going to do that, and that's the oldest bridge in town.
And so that fell under the historical aspect of that.
Yes.
And can you, does the money have to be evenly distributed between the 3 uses
4 uses.
or 4 uses?
It's actually 3 that recreation kind of got piggybacked onto open space. A lot of things went in politically to make this pass, but it's affordable housing, open space / recreation and historic preservation. So we have 10% by law that we have to set aside. So if we get $100,000 collected total, 10 has to go to affordable housing, 10 has to be reserved for historic preservation, and 10 has to be for open space recreation.
And the remaining 70% can go to any of the purposes.
So we could say our priority is we want it all to go to this, or 10%, 20%. But at this point, we've only done the 10% reserves, and then the 70% goes to whatever comes before us.
I think, though, in general, we do try to balance it. Also, the location of projects, like we'd like to see,
All over
project happen
town.
in North Grafton and South Grafton.
Because we've done Mill Villages Park, we've done now the bridge in North Grafton, we've done things in the center, we've done the library, we've done Assamisset Woods, the Pell Farm, the townhouse. So they are spread out, and they do hit on all of the Silver Lake Beach, so they hit on all the categories.
So what will your what is gonna be your fund balance, assuming everything in the springtime meeting passes?
And the projection is that if everything in town meeting passes and fiscal 2020 starts as expected, then the remaining funds will be around $350,000. And it will grow by that much pretty much every year.
So the town's contribution to it on a yearly basis is how much?
The town's contribution projected for 2020 is about $450,000.
And you're expecting about 11% next year for a match?
That's correct. 11% of the prior years.
That's too bad.
Yeah, it used to be around 40%, and that's where they're trying to get it back to, so.
Is there any talk on Beacon Hill about funding sources to implement?
There
What are they talking about? Do you know specifically?
They're
They-
looking to raise, I'm sorry, you have to come to the mic, sorry. Rick is waving at us. Who's also a member of the committee.
They're looking to raise the registry of deeds. That fee has not been raised since the year 2000 when Governor Cellucci signed this into law. So that's the real push on the coalition's part.
Okay, so we're talking about, for those people at home, we're talking about recording fees, deeds, mortgages, notes, all that sort of thing. So
Right.
when you go to buy a house or refinance a house, part of that is going to this fund that goes back into the community.
Exactly.
Okay. I just want to touch on a little bit about what we were talking about, or what you were talking about, Mr. Stevens, with open space and recreation. Correct me if I'm wrong, recreation did not used to be a part of the Community Preservation Act.
It's always been a part of it, but it's kind of, things had to, I don't know if there were two and then they expanded it to three to make it pass
Right.
the first time. They've changed recreation to where before the initial act, you had to create a park out of whole cloth.
Right.
Now you can improve parks that you have, because that, for towns like Boston or Cambridge, they don't have any room to build new parks. So
Right.
all they could do would be to improve the parks they had.
I
Plus, it just didn't make sense, and they figured that out after probably the first year of the act. And then they have made refinements and updated.
I only point this out because it's useful for people to understand that the mission of local government has changed over the past 20 years. And there used to be that if you wanted a park in your community, if you wanted to either create one or improve one, that was just us. That was just your local community. Nowadays, you can go to the CPA and you can go to a fund that is funded by people around the Commonwealth who will not necessarily ever have anything to do with the park that you're using. And you can use that money to build and fund new parks. But such is the predicament of local governments, where we're simply not able to keep up with the needs that people want. And the municipalities were successfully able to convince the legislature to expand the CPA's mission to include those parks. And in fact, there was a lawsuit about it. There was, in Newton, they wanted to use CPA funds for a park. A guy that I, in fact, knew, didn't like him very much, but I knew him, brought a lawsuit, and he was successful. And went before the SJC, and the SJC said no, and they reformed the CPA to allow for monies to go to municipalities. So I only bring this up because I want people to understand that this is a body with finite resources, and the CPA is important to accomplish certain missions in town. The bridge is a really good example. Super Park, a really good example. The project we were talking about on the Common, really good example. And without that
Fisherville
interplay,
Park
yes,
and Eckwell Landing.
perfect. These are the more complicated interplays between state and local government that we have to fund all the things that we need. And sometimes people see us spending money on things. They say, wow, where's that money coming from? Well, it's coming from a specific place for a specific purpose. And we've all identified these specific things that we think make the community a better place. Letting that bridge go to rot was to nobody's benefit. Spending a lot of money that could otherwise have gone to schools would have been to nobody's benefit. And this is a specific fund to identify the projects that improve the character of the community or maintain the character of the community that we wouldn't have otherwise. So I just want to point that out, that this is a good example of the interplay between state and local government trying to improve the character of a community.
We always try to use CPC funds to leverage other funds.
Right.
And the Hassamansa Woods is probably the best example of all the projects that we've done because it was local money, it was state money, it was federal money, it was private
Land trust money.
land trust, it was private TPL. So several different organizations, and that's the best use of our funds. And we try to get people to come up with matching, whether it's in kind or if they can raise even a small amount of money to show good faith, because we don't want to just be the person writing the check. We want to see that there's interest in the community, that there's stakeholders, that this isn't just something that somebody wants to do.
Right.
It's got to be more than one or two people that want something.
That's a really
It's
good
gotta-
example.
it- Whether it benefits 100 people or 18,000 people, that's important too. But it's, even if it is a smaller number, like the bridge in North Grafton, not everybody's going to go to that bridge.
Right.
But it's still, you can see it. It's something that's been preserved. You're not going to have to do that again for another 200 years.
Right. Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
It all falls under the town meeting.
Well, I was just gonna say that too. Like,
The funding source is not like you guys go out and spend this on your own, so people have a say in this.
And
it's
that's something else about
part of the process.
CPA that people probably don't understand, and they have tried at town meeting. Whatever we present at town meeting, the warrant articles, either they have to be approved, they go up or down. They cannot be amended on town meeting floor. So if people don't like it, they can't say, well, we'll make it this for this project, or we'll reduce or increase it. That's not the way CPA works. It's got to be whatever it is, it goes up or down.
And you go through a fairly elaborate application process and vetting process.
Right, that we have 2 meetings where people make their applications, they're there, we have questions for them, and then the next meeting, again, if they need to bring more information, that allows them to have updated their application and provide additional information, and then we vote, because that's usually right when the 45-day limit hits for submitting articles.
you have the public hearing process too as well, right? So the people can come into your meetings and
Right,
discuss.
and they're advertised in the paper, but
I mean, the initiative starts very much like as Ed said, kind of just these boards take up on these initiatives, but ultimately it all goes to a town meeting vote. It all goes to a ballot. It all goes back to the people to vote on. I mean,
Town meeting.
well, I'm just talking about in general, but for you guys, it's town meeting. Some of our stuff could go to a ballot, and it's, you know, therein lies the real power in government too. It's in the people, and they have that right to go and come to town meeting. So I guess maybe I'm just pitching for people to show up to town meeting. And
Just a quick question on the rec side. If does that have to be parks? Does that have some open space contingency to it?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So if the rec department wanted to go and buy a new building, build a new building, renovate a building to put a rec center in,
there's certain things that you cannot do indoor recreation, so I would say no to a gym.
Okay.
Right, Joanne's the.
Under, so the DOR was never very specific when they used the word recreation as to exactly what that meant. But one thing they were very clear about was nothing indoor. So we could do an outdoor swimming pool, but not an indoor pool. No basketball, gymnasium, stadium type things. Bathrooms, yeah, if it's going to allow for recreation to occur, they felt that, a bathroom made sense, like what would be at Nelson Park. That's a very good example of the change that happened in the legislation in 2012, because girls softball came to CPC at one point about building bathrooms at Nelson Park, and we couldn't do it under the law. But now we could, if somebody came to us.
And they did it on their own.
So they went ahead and did it on their own.
so perhaps if that was an initiative that because I know it's been talked about a little bit when rec is here and stuff like that, where they want to see their particular department grow into. So
We could, if they're looking for like a building that they can have to hold classes in, possibly have a basketball court in, put up volleyball, we can't, CP funds
build a
can't.
bathroom in that though.
Well, a standalone bathroom that's accessed from the outside.
And it's gotta service whatever that outside purpose is.
Okay.
But certainly, Jen has come with lots of projects to, as John had mentioned, for Silver Lake.
Yeah,
And I
sure.
met with
Oh,
her
yeah,
last week about, that looking ahead, to come up, even if you have ballpark, I don't need, so that we have
Thanks,
on
John.
our radar what she has in mind, so that these things can get vetted, just like doesn't think, oh, well, this will pay for a gym and I want a gym, so that she doesn't go down a path that 6 months later to the next town meeting, we can't do that.
So the open space and rec plan should identify those things for recreation anyways. Right? I mean, if there was something that they were planning on, it should come out in that study.
Yeah.
And then you'll know that that's queued up for you next time.
All right.
We also, another thing that, with part of the preservation plan, is to have a clearer delineation between CIPC and CPC, because they do get confused, they do get mixed. People sometimes think that we can fund things, and so we don't want to have people file an application and spend a lot of time and have to wait just to find out, or even wait for the process to find out that we can't do something. So that we need to work better with them, and I think a couple years ago, I was better because I knew the chairman at that point, so we need to get back in touch, more in sync with what they're doing and what their projects are, so that they don't misguidedly send people to us, and then they miss out on getting in their line.
There definitely could be some synergies there.
Absolutely. Well, guys, thank you. I'm sure you're gonna stick around for this next one that we have on the agenda.
Are they?
Well,
Where they're-
All right, now.
or maybe not.
Well, they're not gonna, they're still.
They're like, should we?
Do you
Well-
want me to read the notice?
Yeah, so the next thing on our agenda is the Chapter 61B land, right of first refusal, Robinson property, Two-Stowe Road, 163 Upton Street, 165 Upton Street, 171 Upton Street. This is a public hearing for that.
And, there's two separate public public notices, one for three of the lots, right, and one for one of the lots. So I'm gonna read them both right in line, so that instead of reading, there's not two separate hearings, they're the same, so.
Okay.
The Grafton Board of Selectmen will conduct a public meeting on April 9th, 2019 at 7 PM at the Grafton Municipal Center, Conference Room A, to consider whether or not to exercise the town's right of first refusal under Massachusetts General Law C 61B, Section 9, to acquire from Roger Lee Robinson lots 4, 171 Upton Street, comprised of approximately 1.99 acres of land as described on the assessor's map 86 parcel 9C for a bona fide offer of $125,000. Notice from the seller is on file in the Selectmen Town Administrator's Office. Comments thereon may be submitted in writing for the Selectmen Town Administrator's Office by noon on April 15th, or April 5th, 2019, or in person at the hearing. Grafton Board of Selectmen. The second one, the Grafton Board of Selectmen will conduct a public meeting on April 9th, 2019 at 7 PM at the Grafton Municipal Center, Conference Room A, to consider whether or not to exercise the town's right of first refusal under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 61B, Section 9, to acquire from Roger Lee Robinson lots 1, 2, and 3, Two-Stowe Road, 163 and 165, Upton Street, comprised of approximately 8.39 acres of land as described on Assessor's Map 86 Parcel 9A, Map 86 Parcel 9, and Map 86 Parcel 9B for a bona fide offer of $350,000. Notice from the seller is on file in the Selectmen Town Administrator's Office. Comments thereon may be submitted in writing to the Selectmen Town Administrator's Office by noon on April 5th, 2019, or in person at the hearing. Grafton Board of Selectmen.
Move to open the public hearing.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to open the public hearing. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, you wanna,
So, yeah, on February 19th, the board got a letter, you were notified that this land was going to be for sale for a different use of the premises. The total, there's 4 parcels, obviously, and there are 2 bona fide offers, that's why you read 2 public notices on the land. When we get the notice in, we send that notice out to planning, recreation, conservation, CPC, and the assessor's office, and they all came back with memos to the board, which you had in the packet, that said, hey, we recommend you purchase this property to keep it from being developed. So you have first right of refusal. The CPC met last week to fund the entire purchase for the $475,000 for the four lots. We do have a town meeting warrant article for town meeting for May, should you vote to exercise your right. And that's really the long and short of it.
I will just mention that these lots have been on, in every open space plan that we have done as a town. These lots always show up as priority. We've been kind of waiting for the opportunity to purchase them.
So
Do we have and we have the package, should we read the, correspondence from, the other boards?
Sure.
Yeah, they're short, right? They're like 2 sentences. Just recommending to the board they should exercise their right of first.
This is from the planning board. The planning board met on March 25th, 2019,
Go, please, please.
and considered the notice of the town of Grafton for the removal of 4 lots with the addresses of 163, 165, and 171 Upton Street and 2 Stowe Road, owned by Roger Lee Robinson. The town of Grafton, upon receiving the necessary notice, can exercise its right of first refusal to purchase such property. In considering the request, the board discussed the location of these 4 parcels in the context of a larger open space corridor that extends from the south side of the Massachusetts Turnpike to the southeast corner of the town adjacent to the town of Upton. This area is known within the Misco, Warrant, and Whitehall watersheds area of critical environmental concern. Within the Grafton portion, Misco Brook watershed includes the Great Meadow, Cider Mill Pond, and Silver Lake. In addition to being located in the ACEC, the 4 parcels are also in the area identified by the town as a priority protection area. In the 2012 Blackstone Valley Prioritization Project report, the land in the vicinity of Silver Lake was identified as a local priority preservation area. After consideration of this matter and in recognition of the location of these parcels in the ACEC and a larger existing and potential open space network, the board voted unanimously to recommend the purchase of the 4 parcels with the addresses of 163, 165, and 171 Upton Street and 2 Stowe Road. Thank you. That was planning board. Conservation, they mentioned the same, I mean,
That's fine, that's all I,
It's the same language.
yes.
yeah, it's basically the same language.
I just wanted at least one of them read, just so everybody's familiar with it.
Yes, and the Board of Assessors is very short, but they also recommend it.
So this is the big block of woodland that kind of protects some of the watershed area that drains down into, the lake. Right on the corner.
Yes. Yep. And there's one more lot that
There you go.
right to the south of it there. That is would be another priority purchase if we could at some point. But otherwise,
You talking about due south, that one right there?
no,
Or
the one on that one right there.
that one?
Right,
Right.
Ken?
Is that
Yeah,
for
but
sale
butts
as
right
well?
up to.
Or-
Not yet. Not yet.
Okay, who owns that piece?
That's Robinson.
Robinson owns all of the green highlighted properties.
Yeah.
Do we know what he wants for it?
Well, that one.
Has anybody approached him?
Oh, I don't know. I believe the land trust has a lot over the years, but these are the first ones that have come up for sale, so that's why I want to buy them.
Yeah, I'm just saying if you're protecting this particular area and you're already outlaying the cash for 4, it seems like the prices are relatively reasonable. Why not? It's all the same owner. Why not go to him and say, can we grab them all? He's going to tell me why he can't.
Ken Holberger. The understanding is that the Robinson will be preparing to sell that southern lot in the years to come, and the intent is to sell it as a single lot. And what that means to the town is that its price is going to be capped at what a single lot is worth. And if you're in a few years from now, I can project that this CPA will have accumulated enough money again to purchase that one when the time comes.
Unless it's
And
for
so-
housing.
Excuse me?
Unless it's for housing.
It's big enough for 1 and possibly 2 houses.
That one?
And,
The one on the right.
Oh, the one on the right. Yeah. I'm
no,
talking about the southern one.
the southern lot
Yeah.
is the next one.
Yeah.
And so when the time comes, that's going to be, there'll be a a bona fide offer, for that lot as a single nice lot.
Yeah.
And it'll be bounded somewhere in the range of $150,000 and $200,000 on the high end. And the CPA will certainly have enough money at that point.
But you don't have enough money at this point now.
Actually, there's probably enough, if it were to come in the fall, there probably is enough money. But I don't think it's going to come in the fall. It'll probably come in a year or 2 or 3 from now. And to speak to what you were just saying, the bigger lot on the other side, that's a big project. That's a bond issue.
Yeah, that's huge.
That's a bond issue.
Yeah.
And that's,
Also-
from my understanding of the Robinson family plan is that's further in the future.
Okay. Like a few years?
Or I would hope longer than that.
Yeah, me too. Okay.
I would hope longer than that. So,
Yeah,
I guess the point is that I don't think we're making a choice of one or the other here. I think we're saying that this is the first opportunity and we have the funds and, we should get it. And if that second lot comes up on the lakefront, that'll be, just as important to purchase and even more affordable because it's only one lot.
So if we use CPA funds for the purchase of this, is there any restriction that gets put on it?
The CPA, I believe in the warrant that it approved, suggested or mandated that that it be purchased under the auspices of the Conservation Commission, and suggested that a conservation restriction be offered to the land trust.
Just walk me through that. So, because there are conservation restrictions on other open space properties, this means
For instance,
no trails, no.
that would be the same as for the Pell Farm. A conservation restriction was written on that, and the land trust accepted responsibility for that CR.
It allows passive recreation, but not active recreation.
Correct. Passive recreation and
Hiking.
related uses.
But no trails like in some of the other land trust.
Oh, no, absolutely trails.
Trails?
Absolutely
That's
Just
what
no
I was getting at.
motorbikes.
Oh, yeah, okay. That's
No,
fine.
yeah, the only restriction is pretty much motorized vehicles.
Okay.
Pell was a little different because there was federal money involved, right?
Yes, Pell had, was it federal or state?
Well, I think it was a pass-through, but it was a state partnership with
Correct.
GLP or GLP.
Right. That was a complex deal. In fact, part of that was sold to an abutter, with the town receiving a conservation restriction from the abutter.
Yeah, but the second piece, when we get to this restriction, it's written in collaboration. It's not just one group's writing it and this is it. It's gonna be, land trust, conservation,
Right.
recreation. There'll be opportunities for the
Right.
board to
Yeah,
chime
the
in
various,
on what you think should be there in terms of passive recreation.
right, the various town boards participate in, specifying the language of the
Okay.
conservation restriction.
They specify the language, and does that get ratified by the town meeting, us?
No, it'd be the board and whoever's gonna hold the restriction.
Right.
Okay, so we get to see that composite and we get to decide.
Yes, and there, in my experience, the conservation restrictions are substantially the same.
Okay.
There's usually a few little things that are different in them, but they're substantially the same.
The last one we would have done was the property over by the Great Meadow Gateway.
Oh, I remember.
That's right, that one
Is
too.
that the right name?
All right.
Yes, Great Meadow Gateway, that's true.
What's the red outline? Is that just so we're looking at one?
Just to show you
okay.
the locus
But
of
it,
the area.
we don't, there's nothing across the street or on
Thanks.
the other side of Stowe or whatever. Okay, that's what I thought. Just wanted to make sure.
The reason why, the southern property, if it's all continuous, one owner and stuff like that, maybe this is the point where we can get all of them. I don't know.
Oh,
the
you mean
comp-
approach
Yeah,
him?
maybe you can get a better deal about it. I don't know. Maybe it's because if you go into the town and asking for something like this, it's all continuity to it. You're protecting that, but then there's an area between it that gets down to Silver Lake that falls under the same guise. And I don't know what the composition of the board will be like in 2 years. I don't know if there'll be any appetite for this. Who knows if in 2 years we have any money to do anything, and we look at everything through that spectacle of, even though it's CPA funds and things like that, we don't have the money to do these type of things, let it go. Now you don't particularly have that issue, especially if you have a reserve, so, I don't know. The argument can be made.
Right, so, excuse me, the,
I can.
the CPA funds are fairly predictable. Like, they're very predictable, let's put it that way. You know, the state match varies, it varies somewhat, but, you know, the surcharge comes in every year, and the state match comes in at some point every year, so it is very predictable.
Except for the year that 2 years out you have a $800,000 project that somebody wants to do, like maybe not the common, but maybe somewhere else, and you don't have that reserve, and this right of first refusal falls under our coffers, and we may or may not have the money for it.
I have two things to say about that. One is that we mentioned those reserves, the mandated reserves. And so the historical reserve, the open space reserve, and the housing reserve get replenished at a state mandated level every year. So there will be a portion reserved for open space, which is what we're talking about here.
Okay.
And so the second thing is that I believe it's a custom of the town that if the town doesn't feel that it cares to accept, take a right of first refusal, it does offer it to the Grafton Land Trust. And so that's sort of a second level.
Okay, so we can't actually offer it up. We have to purchase it and then give it over
No.
to them.
No, that's not you sign, the town is able to assign the right of first refusal right.
Okay, so that is in direct opposition to what Jenny told us we could do with.
No, yeah, for Affordable Housing Trust, you cannot assign your right to a first right of refusal. For Land Trust, you can assign that right, and I think you did that with Powell. I don't know.
No,
Right,
actually,
either way,
the
there's
town
no
bought the
appetite to do
Pell,
this anyways. I'm just
and
running
the
it.
Land
Doesn't
Trust might
matter.
have kicked
Whatever.
some money into it, I forget.
No, but your point's duly noted,
Okay.
Bruce. I mean, that is going to be an important piece, I think. If we pick this up, we really need to pick up
The
that.
argument has already been made for you for this particular piece.
Yeah,
Well,
and so, but I guess my point is, I don't think that we really need to consider it as a choice of this one, and, if we get this one, do we not get the next one? I believe that there will be funds, the timing will work out such that there will be funds to pick them both up.
And I just want to mention that land only becomes available for a finite amount of time, and
And only
you can't even
occasionally.
really control
And only once in a while.
only once in a while, and we really have no control over when it goes. And these lots were sold, and we have the right of first refusal. So, in my opinion, when you can buy property, you do it.
When speaking,
If it makes sense, and this makes sense.
when speaking to the property owner, did he give you any reason as to why only this parcel and then not the next one? To Bruce's point, or was there any discussion as to, yeah, I'm just kind of looking to sell these 4 lots first. I'm gonna hold on to and see what happens 5 years down the road, 2 years down the road, whatever. Or did he say to you guys, hey, I'll give you, give me another 2 years and I'll sell you that? I mean, what was the actual
Okay,
discussion?
We're not
well, I was
negotiating
not
with-
party to the discussion. I
Okay.
have only hearsay on what I heard about the discussion. And it was my impression that that he wasn't selling, that he had said that he wasn't selling that land, that lot to the south, that he was, reserving that for the future. And, maybe his cash needs are met by this $475,000 for the time being.
Sure.
And when he needs the cash again, he may open up that next lot. And it is only one lot, so it's, lots have a certain upper bound price.
Sure.
And it's less than $475,000 by at least a factor of 2, if not 3.
Is the
Where-
timeline on the
But he had no
right?
timeline.
Where are our funds to purchase this coming from?
CPC,
CPC, okay, entirely,
yes,
okay.
And when was the bona fide offer submitted?
February 19, so you meet the 120-day window.
Perfect.
Okay,
Anybody from the public here to speak on this, as this is a public hearing? Anybody else from the board have any comments, questions,
I think
concerns?
the
Oh,
gentleman right there.
sorry, I didn't see you, sir. Jumped the gun.
We,
Just state your name for the record and where you live.
Jim O'Toole, part owner of 19 acres of land on Stowe Road. The other owners of that land would like to express to the town that we're in favor of you taking that property. There are many developments near there, and having some conservation land will help beautify the town and create more natural habitat. The 19 acres of land that we own is the North Grafton Fish, Game, and Bird Club, surrounded by conservation land on three sides: the north side, the east side, and the west side. Mr. Robinson's land is the south side of our land. Our land is going to be there in perpetuity. It's not ever coming up for sale. It's always going to be there. We see in that area deer crossing Stowe Road going into Mr. Robinson's property. We see turkeys, hawks in the trees. It's great piece of land. It is surrounded by water. It's wetlands. Our club donates a substantial amount of money every year to the Conservation Commission because we're big into that. All over town. Not just because this land is near us, but everywhere. We always give them money every year. Because we like to support their efforts in preserving open space. This parcel of land, 8.39 acres, is surrounded by wetlands and should be preserved. We weren't aware that you were talking about another piece for 125,000, a second piece?
It's really 4 lots, but it's all one big piece that you see.
Okay, because the other one was never mentioned in the the publication that come out in the newspaper didn't say anything about that other
It would have been
piece.
2 separate.
Not on the same days?
notices. Maybe it was not on the same page, but it should have come out on the same paper.
So
No?
one of the notices was lots 1, 2, and 3, and the second notice was for lot 4. So
The same day? Published the same day?
I don't
It
know.
should- it would have
It
had
should
to
have
have
been.
been,
It
right?
was. It was.
Yeah, at the bottom, does it have the date? It doesn't say date published at the bottom.
It just says the date, March 25th, 2019 is when we made the public hearing notice.
There's only an offer on 2 of them?
There's
No,
an
the-
offer.
2 separate buyers.
One buyer was gonna buy 3,
Yeah.
one buyer's gonna buy 1.
Gotcha, alright.
I never saw the second one. That's neither here nor there. That's good about the second one, and then that other piece of land. Mr. Robinson is a member of our club. We know him well. We know him well. We know what he's gonna do. He's already told us. He offered the club the land. We said, mortgages, we can't handle that. He said, okay, well, maybe the town will take it. We said, okay, well, let's go that way first, see what happens.
Awesome.
We hope, we hope you'll,
But
you
hope-
consider taking it and giving it to
Yeah,
conservation.
we're not the only step, though.
Oh, I know.
I love that those conversations happen, and then it doesn't happen, and then everybody hangs
Yep.
their hat on us for not purchasing a property when 40B rolls in.
So what happens
It's
after
a big
tonight?
chunk of stuff. What happens after tonight, if we would close the public hearing, after all the comments were taken, we would decide if we were gonna exercise our right. There's a placeholder on the warrant now anyways. Later on this evening, we'd sign the warrant, or at the very least get it to the point where it can be signed, and then you and all your landowners that live in town that can vote in town should come to town meeting and support it.
Okay.
And I believe the CPC, you guys have already gone through your process? Okay, so you vetted this under the assumption that we were gonna exercise, so. That's the timeline.
Only
Okay.
because the timing.
No,
you
it
know,
makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
we would've waited
Anybody
till
else care to speak on this?
Can Mr. O'Toole go talk to Lee about that southern parcel and how much he wants for it?
Well, now that we know that they know each other, we know where to find Mr. O'Toole. I thought, what is the place called? The Fish and what?
The gun club.
The
The
gun
Gun
club.
Club.
Gun club.
All right.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Do we have any other
Everybody-
comments out there?
Nope.
Second?
Motion made and seconded to close the public hearing. Discussion on the motion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I'll move the board vote to exercise its right under Mass General Law C 61B to purchase 2 Stowe Road, 163 Upton Street, 165 Upton Street, and 171 Upton Street.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion on the motion.
Just that when they go to sell that parcel, they should come talk to us.
They
Agreed.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
They'll
I
have
mean,
to, because they'll have to take it out of 1A or
Right.
B or whatever it's under.
Yeah.
61B. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, guys. All right, under new business, we have a vote to sign a contract for the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners.
So we reported on this last week. There are a number of projects that either had funding left over from the state of Massachusetts, from the library, Board of Library Commissioners. So they have funds in excess of $460,000, which we're going to be reimbursed for that amount, which means our borrowing in May won't be 9.1 million, it'll be 8.64 million. So it helps a lot. So that's part of our reimbursement for our 53% match for that, so that they do a quarter over different fiscal years. However, if money, because other projects don't get funded, as in this scenario, those other projects on the list further down will get those funds. So that's what this contract does, and it's for the chair to sign.
All right. Anybody have any comments, questions?
I'll make a motion. I move the board vote to allow the chair to sign the Massachusetts Public Library Construction Program Agreement and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Standard Contract Form.
Second?
Motion made and seconded. Discussion on the motion?
Aye.
Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
You're
Motion
leaving it
carries.
hanging?
I know.
Also, we have
Stare
a,
at
They're looking at me. I'm like, what are you looking at me for? I always do that, don't I?
we have a pledge of license for Alms Siram Corp., doing business as Valley Plaza Discount Liquors. How you doing?
So you've done this in the past for Cancun's, where if an owner of a liquor license is going to borrow money, they have to do a pledge of license, which has to be approved by the Board of Selectmen. So that's the setup of it all. You've been here before.
Yes. Yes. There was a change. I was here before. And so, I mean, my lawyer, we spoke, and he said that I'm supposed to be here. I don't know where this is. Should I be answering anything, or?
That's your first problem. You listen to your lawyer.
I know you have to, I guess.
But that, I mean, what I just described is very abbreviated, but there's really nothing more to it than you approve
Yeah.
it. So they can get a loan and they pledge it and tell the ABCC that they have
Yeah.
pledged it for that loan.
Knowing, I mean, just, you know, having gone through that process before, that's one thing because of the liability thing. So if the bank is giving you money, then they're kind of in charge of that license too, and they want to know that you're going to have that, because without that you might not be able to pay them back, and that's why they want to make sure that they, you know.
That's your collateral.
There's
Yeah,
a good value.
exactly.
It is.
So your lawyer probably told you not to say much of anything. So, it's good advice.
You need a motion?
We do.
I move the board vote to approve the pledge of collateral application for Om Saram Corporation.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
We
Thank you.
appreciate you being here anyway.
Yes.
Should I not be here?
No, gotta come in.
Here, you had.
We like
Gotta
it.
come in.
Have a good one.
All right.
Can I just say something?
Yep.
Okay. So, the property down there to the south, stuff like that, if we were to look at it now, I mean, the process by which these take, you know, now that it's now out there, that we have an appetite.
Can I just recommend that if you have negotiations for land purchase, you should do an executive session?
Okay.
Just for the board to consider that before you consider that.
Well, you should have told me that during the public hearing when I was talking about buying a piece of property to the south.
It took me that long to.
To
Fine,
recollect.
There was a sliding discussion.
Yeah.
It slid over.
Who knows? We might not want it. You know, now we're playing hardball, right? All right.
Well, it's
Selectmen,
kind of hard not to. do
Property's
that.
terrible anyway.
It's all
Selectmen reports, TA reports. I have a couple of Selectmen reports. One, so just so everyone, the town knows, and we entered into executive session last week, and unanimously decided to not extend the town administrator's contract.
Well, that makes it sound like.
There was a more positive spin to it.
Well, there was more to it. I think that Tim decided that he didn't.
We didn't do any negotiations, did we?
Well, yeah, we didn't.
We decided.
Well, yeah. We. Oh, I'm sorry. And we voted to approve a 2% pay
Yeah.
increase unanimously. Sorry, and that we will not be extending his contract at this time.
At this time.
So that's what we voted on.
There's still 2
Sorry.
years left on the
Perfect.
contract.
That's right.
So there's
Alright.
more time to extend the contract.
And second,
What's the next one?
this is more positive. Senior
That was
ce-
positive.
Senior Center. I wanted to meet with them and kind of have like a coffee hour thing. We hadn't done that, and that's always a good time. So I reached out to Barbara, or I had Becca reach out on our behalf to them. Barbara wrote me back. She said that they have two availabilities. You know, the beginning of May would be the best, since the April newsletter is already out. So they would say, you know, either Monday, May 6th, or Thursday, May 9th at 10 a.m. And then the other question was, do we want it to set it up as a panel discussion or just a casual coffee hour?
May 6th, or what was that? Or the
Or
9th?
May 9th? One's a
The
Monday
6th is better for me, but.
at 10 a.m.
I would lean towards casual.
Casual?
Yeah.
Just the last, we've always said casual, and we kind of end up in a panel anyway.
Yeah.
Which
The
is fine. I mean,
I think we've
it
done
doesn't matter.
we've done kind
Yeah.
of both, and both work great.
One's always migrate into the other.
Yeah.
Well, I think because when you have casual conversations, people are getting answers to questions that more than one person wants that same answer.
Right.
So then it's kind of like they want to hear it too. So it's
Yeah.
gets to be kind of better in a panel almost. But
Do you feel like if we went in and there's like a table of us and we just sort of sat around the table, it would be off-putting?
No, we all sit
No.
on a chair, and we're in front of them. They typically are socializing, and there's usually food and beverages and.
However you guys want to do it. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, the way
least it's
normally
organized
how
that
it was, we kind of would walk in, have, you know, coffee, bagels, talk with everyone like for 15, 20 minutes, and then they kind of sit us down and kind of, you know,
Yeah.
That's how it is.
yep.
in the past, we've provided the pastries.
Yes.
Would you like me to do that again?
Yes. And we'll
We
make sure.
prefer
To,
vegan
You say
pastries
we.
if
You're
you could.
the one that does it.
From a union
I know, but
pastry
you
shop.
guys give me cash.
Oh, fair
I was
enough.
just gonna say we can Venmo you,
You
and
guys-
Trader Joe's.
Yeah, no, yeah,
So-
you're the one that's doing the work, though.
I know, but
so how about we just tell them, you know, we'll casual and panel.
Yeah.
We'll do both, and
Yeah, casual panel.
And what date works better?
We did the 6th or the 9th.
What time of the day?
10 a.m.
6th of May.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hold
That's
on.
right, because we're already past the 6th of April, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Time is flying.
Either is fine.
Either is fine.
6 is better for me. but-
So, Bruce.
Yeah, whatever, sure.
All right. So why don't we say the 6th? We'll do May 6th at 10 a.m.
I'm local, so I'm easy. So it's
Same with
you
me,
guys are
so-
coming out of
Yeah.
town, so
Well, that's good. And sometimes the panel's better. Well, they need to know because they like to set up a microphone too, because sometimes it's hard
Yes.
for them to hear.
So I'll reach. I'm sure Barbara's probably watching this meeting like everyone else. But if she's not, by any chance, I will email her tomorrow morning. And that's all I got for selectmen
sounds fun.
reports.
that's brilliant.
So, you want me to go?
Unless anyone else has anything.
No,
I got
All right, go ahead, Tim.
All right. So we continue to meet with Wyman Gordon. The Henneman Group has that property. We had a good meeting with them yesterday. They actually have a company, a biotech company that's undercover for their name. It's called the Iris Project. It's only a 250,000 square foot facility that they're looking at, locating at the front of that site. This is pre them sending the package to the street to realtors for development purposes. So we're meeting with them on Friday to talk about the town. So we'll do that on Friday morning. When we get to the warrant, you'll see one additional change or addition. It's a 43D designation, which is expedited permitting within 180 days. We did it for what we thought was gonna be UPS coming to town. UPS liked that idea. Tony Russell had to petition us to do that. Wyman Gordon is very interested in having that designation so they can help push along the sale of this property. And Craig's not here, but I did pitch to the EDC a while back that a hotel study should be done for Grafton, given the vicinity to the Mass Pike. And we're looking to get some of those funds from both local banks and credit unions, the EDC, professional technical of the town administrator's budget, and we're asking Wyman Gordon for some dough too, because when we change, actually, we don't even need to change the zone, but a hotel could go on that spot with a special permit. So that, if we're looking at this legacy place model like in Dedham, that would be a component. but there's not a hotel chain that will talk to a community unless you have that study complete. So we'll all have skin in the game in terms of getting that study done, but thankfully they are willing
much does that
participants in
cost?
that. I think we got it down to, it was started out at 8,500, we did get 3 quotes. I think we got the people down to 6,500 to
Does
group
that
out of
fall with
Boston.
the EDC's? What's the EDC's budget this year?
It's only like 15,000, I think.
Yeah, I think 12.
So they could fund it.
Yeah, we split it up. We got other funding pieces. They're paying for a portion, but we worked out the funding.
All right.
What about,
What are they
are
doing
there
with
any-
the other piece of that 15,000?
Off the top of my head, I can't
12.
tell you, but there are
12.5.
things with the 12.
They do the annual business breakfast.
Are they paying for John Allen out of that, or no?
No, that's still out of the warrant, or is it out of the budget now and out of the warrant for next fiscal? No, he's only been a year, so it's
2
it's
years,
supposed to be
right?
fiscal.
For,
It must be in the warrant from the first go around. I don't think we have it in operations now.
yes,
We do,
yes.
but he's only been here 1 fiscal.
I believe he's in, no, he was funded in October, a year and a half ago, and then he was
Alright, then we moved
hired,
him
it
in.
took
Okay.
some months to
Yeah.
hire him, and then last fiscal, it was in the planning budget. And this fiscal,
It'll go back to the
Well,
warrant.
I don't want to nitpick. Who's on our TIF committee? Who's there?
The TIF committee, myself, Marcia Platt.
Brooke?
No, Brooke is not.
Craig.
I think it's Craig.
Okay.
yeah, he was with UPS, he was.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Craig was
Right.
there.
So let's change that next meeting. So an active city board members on that committee. I know he will be, but probably not when this is going to happen, so just for continuity's sake.
Yeah. So that's the whole thing with Wyman Gordon.
And,
Yeah,
oh,
yep.
I'm sorry, before you move on, help me out. 250,000 square feet. I'm bad with square feet. What am I looking at when I look at Wyman Gordon?
The front building that's not connected to the back.
Okay.
don't
Can you,
have good
put
perf-
it
that's
on the
only 80,000
screen?
square feet, that front
Back-
brick building.
Okay.
on the screen.
The back building is about 780,000 square feet.
Oh.
So
okay.
250 is, in my mind, not the highest and best use for that parcel for the front.
Right.
We want a bigger retail bang for the buck there, but Project Iris probably doesn't. They're looking at existing buildings and they're looking at raw land. There is a lot of vacant space in the 495 corridor, so I think it's a long shot to pick the site. There are other sites in Grafton, as you know, on Route 30, Tufts, and Mass Development site. Of course, they want to sell it as best they can, as quickly as they can. But we'll have a discussion with them about choosing Grafton, but maybe not inside this parcel.
Has excellent pike access.
Oh, it's incredible.
So if
But
that's
it's not the whole parcel, so
That's the
Right,
whole-
right,
that's the whole
right.
parcel.
Be
It's,
this
it's the
front
front where
portion.
the building is out to Worcester Street
So where would they park their vehicles?
for the
Employees?
2 shifts that they're running now. There's enough space there to reconfigure. A lot of the floor space in the 750,000 square foot are presses, not
Yep.
people. So all that mechanical equipment, there has to be a rework of the numbers that planning would say based on square footage, we need so many cars. Obviously, if you're gonna have a manufacturing facility, you need to make sure you have parking for your employees, so it would make sense to make sure they got it right.
Yep.
So that'll be refactored into this in terms of whether it's a large-scale retail development or a large-scale biotech firm.
Man.
But
A
the
lot of-
potential on that front parcel is unbelievable. And it's gonna be great because it is a quarter mile from the pike.
What's in the back there?
On the right,
Yeah.
it's open space. There is access on Donahue Lane, that street directly to the green, not on that, go towards Worcester Street.
Yeah, no, dead end. To the right, yeah, right
Right.
there.
Yeah, right there. So is there a possibility for some other housing development looking over Hubby Pond or otherwise? It's a potential, but not the main, that's not for sale, but we have talked about that as a development potential as well.
Right.
And where you see the pie shape on the left, that piece in the middle is all National Grid, so that strip is an easement for National Grid that, we don't know what to do with that 7 acres that's to the left. And the next 40 acres to the left of that is in Millbury, which we can't highlight because we don't have access to their maps. But that could be a potential too at Precision Casting that is obviously still Wyman Gordon, but just in a different town.
Sure.
So that has potential.
All right.
So yesterday, we're prepping for the bond rating that we're gonna have, It's not gonna be a conference call. This is the first time in 10 years, or probably longer, that we've brought S&P out for a presentation, meet the staff, and do a tour of the community. So we were preparing for that yesterday. They're coming out on the 16th, 17th. And we're gonna make the pitch for a AAA rating. We're at the bottom echelon of where the other 53 municipalities are in terms of income levels and EQV, equalized value for homes. We're gonna make the pitch. We're certainly gonna maintain the AA plus rating, but if we can get to a AAA, I think that's obviously the goal. And hopefully through that, you will end up saving people money through the borrowing for the library, which we just talked about. We're reducing that, and the money for the DPW facility. So we'll keep you posted on that. The Adams Road meeting for the developer is happening tomorrow. So Ginny will be here, staff will be here, the developer, his attorney, and we'll have hopefully a fruitful discussion on that matter. I know I sent you an email on some of the information that came out in the meeting wasn't completely accurate, but before we started that project, there were water issues that were reported by the homeowners that I think it's important that the public knows that, and the board knows that as well. It wasn't completely flushed out during the meeting, so I wanted to make that clear. And then today we met with Way Zero because of the bag issue. The CEO of the company came out very apologetic for the issues they've been having and gave us a couple assurances that it'll never happen. And we shared with them we are shopping for our new bag vendor. And they understood that, and they appreciated the fact that we were honest with them, but they also know that they're simply not going to make those mistakes again. So if it has to be a resident calling them directly, that'll be one avenue. If I have to hand out bags at the counter because someone's displeased, they'll provide those bags to us. The retailers will always take the bags back and give a new sleeve or give a refund. So we'll make sure all that stuff continues to happen, even though we're shopping for another bag vendor. Did I miss anything with that?
No.
The warrant articles we'll go over in detail if you like, but the two changes that are in the special and the annual, the 43D designation for Wyman Gordon is one, so that's new. When Justin Souza and Mary Oliver were here last week, they talked about the Gold Star family exemption. It's a full exemption. At the time, we thought the DOR and the state would reimburse the town for that exemption. They will not. We have no families that are Gold Star eligible right now, but it could be a tax exemption between our average tax bill between 5 and 12 grand if we had one. Inside the overlay, we can make up that difference. So we want to. I still think the community should adopt it, regardless. But those are the two changes inside of there. And then finally, the bids for the handicap ramp installation are due back tomorrow. We'll likely have a contract before the board, so we can start work as soon as possible. At least on the way we broke it out was 1, 2, 3 ramps. We did the front one first as the priority, and then
Base, yep.
and then
Front
there
is
were 2
base,
alternates
back
for the back ramps.
So the warrant, do we have a meeting next week?
Yeah, but next week, we have always positioned you to sign next week.
All right. Isn't that the third of the, it's the third Tuesday?
Why?
No, just saying.
We've been having a lot of meetings.
All right. No,
Yeah, but that's all right. You go
It's
first,
a regular.
first and
First, second,
second,
and
and then
third.
the third.
The second is,
This is
Typically a work
You
session.
just have a lot of work.
Doing right now.
yeah.
That's all
we're at
there
the
is.
shop.
Just fine. I'm just saying if we were gonna discuss particular pieces of the warrant,
And we should do that now to figure out if you want to put things in different places
because
or.
we'll have no time to change it after next meeting, which is kind of what I'm.
No, and that's why we handed them out last week, and that's why it's again on the agenda now. And then finally, just under my report, I just want to be able to give out the study committee for the fire department. You have a lot of applicants for the positions. You're supposed to have 3 rank and file firefighters, 2 in a leadership role. Those 3 that I just mentioned that are rank and file are supposed to be from all stations, 1, 2, and 3. The applicant pool you have are all from station 2, so it makes it a little odd. So no one from station 1 or 3, rank and file applied. For leadership positions, you've got station 1, 2, and 3, and you have 4, but you only can pick 2. And then members at large, you have 5, but you can only pick 3. And then obviously you have an easy one as the Board of Selectmen. So I try to, if you just take one and pass it down, I try to create a little matrix so you can at least see, who applied, what their role was. Even we put down in the right-hand column if they're retired firefighters or not. Some of these names you'll know, some you may not, but we have to, I would always want to do the easiest one first to figure out who the board member is going to be, and then pick from, you know, you only have 3 and you have to choose out of 5, and then you have 4 and you have to choose 2. And then the first group, firefighters, you can just pick those, but you have to know that you don't have any representation from 1 or 3. But because of the way you put the charge, that group always has to take input from the public. So if Station 1 member or Station 3 member who are not on this list could come and make comments or ask questions. So you still have that availability. So you don't have to make these appointments tonight, but I wanted at least you to know who's in the mix as of right now. Tomorrow we'll send you their letters of interest, and we'll have to figure out the best way to either interview, agree, pick. I don't really know the next best step to make the selection for who should be on the committee.
Interview and pick sounds good.
Yeah. That's,
So will that be in front of the entire board with all these members for a next meeting or some other future meeting? Just so I know I can get the logistics worked out.
Do you want to do leadership one night and then member at large another night? Or do you want to do them all one night?
yeah.
It may be that, you know, we can pick members at large from, they didn't apply specifically for certain areas, right?
No, we just kind of plugged
You
them
just
in,
kinda
knowing
org-
the charge had,
Right, but if we didn't pick out of these 4 for a leadership role, if we could switch the 2 that we didn't pick down to the member at large pool if we wanted to, or up to the different stations, couldn't we?
well, the leadership role is finite, so you wanted 2 from leadership. So,
No, I
yeah,
know,
anyone,
but-
if you picked 2, if you picked Alan and Braun
Yes.
and wanted to move Bob and Eric someplace else, you could do that.
Right, well, that's what it, because there's a captain from Station 3 and there's a lieutenant from Station 1, and you're saying on top, if under the firefighters from different stations, we only have 2. The only ones that had applied were from Station 2, but in reality, we could do
You can
some
move
shuffling
Eric up into another position instead of the leadership position, sure.
if we want, but overall, we still have more applicants than we have
Yeah.
spots.
Perfect. We want to talk about this next meeting?
That's fine.
Yeah, why don't we do that? Why don't we move this to Tuesday?
In terms of interviewing or process.
I think just to have a better, Craig could be here, we could have a better
All right,
discussion.
we'll
on
send
it.
out
You gonna be here?
all of their letters of interest. You guys can review them, and then you'll start to draw your own conclusions on who you think is the best fit. and then we can have them in a subsequent meeting.
Sure.
But every one of these members have called me diligently to get on this committee, so.
Yeah, there's not a massive rush to have this thing.
I think for some people, there is a massive.
Yeah, I get that, but I'm just saying, we can put some nice thought into this. Instead of
Yep.
just throwing out a meeting, having some people come in and talk to us for a little bit. Now we got the list.
Yeah.
We'll take a look.
All right, next item on our agenda is correspondence.
I do have, of course, correspondence that I didn't read last week because, I don't know, we thought, I don't, anyway.
I was
I'm
supposed to
gonna
have
read
it
it,
on,
I'm gonna read it
on
this
this
week.
meeting's agenda, and I didn't, but I don't want it to be too old, so
Okay,
unless you
so-
guys take care, but I think we should read it now.
I'll read it.
Get
Fired.
stuck or lost.
All right, dear Sargon,
Jump in.
attached to this email is responses from the school committee from our March 26, 2019 meeting in regards to the Grafton Sustainability Commission. On behalf of the school committee, please accept our remarks as input to further your discussion and deliberations. We thank the Board of Selectmen for the time and considerations to await the outcome. If you or anyone on your board feels that we can be of assistance to the Board of Selectmen, please let us know. From Peter Carlson, the chair of that committee. All right, so they attached changes to the charge, the draft charge. So be it resolved that the Grafton Board of Selectmen hereby establish the formation of the Grafton Sustainability Commission, an advisory committee which shall include 13 total members, including 2 members of each school committee, finance committee, and Board of Selectmen. The school committee and finance committee shall determine their members at their sole discretion. Those 6 members shall constitute the GSC's executive, it's a typo, sorry, committee, and are empowered to appoint by majority vote 5 additional members of the Grafton community as they see fit to accomplish the committee's charge. The GSC will be advisory in nature and is charged with assisting and planning for additional tactics and strategies to improve the town's operational efficiency and effectiveness in future fiscal years, including offering guidance to the executive board, the school committee branches of the Grafton's government. The GSC will do so by helping to define the choices facing Grafton with respect to municipal and educational service levels and their term funding requirements and identity. Within this context, innovative ways of increasing short and long-term operational efficiency and effectiveness, and identify new or enhanced sources of funding for town services. As part of its overall review, the GSC should look at the assumptions about revenues and expenditures to determine if the forecast for the next 5 years is within the range or reasonable projections, and if adjustments should be made or on what basis. The GSC will provide research, comparables, forecasts, and ultimately will provide Grafton with key information that Grafton government can draw upon to make key long-term fiscal decisions in the future. The GSC will, with the assistance of the Town Administrator's Office and the Superintendent's Office, research benchmarking, income analysis, and spending analysis to ultimately determine and make recommendations upon sustainability of the services that Grafton residents rely upon. Its report shall be completed on or before the February 28th, 2020, and its findings and reports shall be made publicly available. That is from the school committee.
All right.
That is all the correspondence I have, because I
Perfect.
did this one last week.
So it's going on the agenda for next.
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
When's our next meeting?
Next
Next
week.
Next week? Okay.
All right. Discussion items. We have two. We have the annual and special town meeting warrants for the first month. So I know you have the warrants.
Yeah, so I handed them out last week. Did anybody have an opportunity to read them? Do they have any comments for me now? If not, I wanted to go over, I just wanted to run through every article and see if there's input that needs.
Yeah. I think if we just have a broader discussion on, just kind of go over the articles.
Okay.
Some of them are
Some are
admin
housekeeping.
stuff, housekeeping stuff.
Is
but-
Joe gonna come and talk about the planning board articles? Because they were a little, those are the ones I don't know what.
Yeah, some of the petition articles and some of them, we can certainly invite him in for the next meeting if you want.
They're having it their own
Did Ed
set
get
of
one?
public hearing
Yeah,
process.
I think
Oh,
they
for
might have already
sure.
had them, but.
But I just thought like normally Joe came in and told us about their
Yeah.
articles specifically. Maybe not.
No,
I could be.
maybe if it was something controversial or complex, but we can certainly ask him to come in.
Well, we don't have. I just.
I'm gonna come in for the marijuana stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe that's
Yeah,
why.
well, that's,
So I'll start with the special, that's the one you have in front of you. We're gonna adjust fiscal 19's budget. The only place we really see issues now are potentially health insurance, and we'll look to scrub within the operating budget, if we can transfer money for those health insurance lines that might go over. Again, the fiscal year doesn't end until June 30, so we're doing our best to project out, and we'll make those adjustments as we get closer to May. There'll be transfers within departments from personnel to expense. Probably most notably will be the police department. It won't be a request for money from any other place, but just moving within personnel and expenses. Snow and ice, right now, it looks like snow and ice will be a deficit of about 200,000, and we'll do the same for that. We'll look at existing warrant articles that we can close out, and we will look to existing appropriation to transfer in. Worst case, we will look to either free cash or stabilization to fund snow and ice deficit. Prior year bills, this is a housekeeping item. Right now, we do not have any, so that could be passed over. But we wanna keep it on just because if we get something, we wanna be able to pay the vendor or whomever. Sick and vacation buyback is a housekeeping item. Number 5, assessors FY 20 property evaluation. We talked about this with Mary when she was here. We're taking money from her budget to put into this article, and there's an existing article that's gonna augment this reval. And is there free cash, the second piece of that?
And or overlay potentially.
Okay. So everybody, we have to do reval it's cyclical, is it every 3 years, or, I said cyclical, but that's not right.
Yeah. It used to be 5, I believe it's 3 now. Right, it went from 5 to 3, yeah.
And then 6 is establishing a school rental revolving fund. The school district has a memo that went to the board early on with what that was. 7 is another school revolving fund. And then 8 is the conversion of streetlights to LED. We have a grant we think we're gonna get. We think we're in good shape to get a grant from Green Communities to change all of the sodium, mercury lights. We have Cobra overhead lights around the common or on every street, 2 LED. And we have to actually take ownership of those poles.
So the first grant we used was to change the lights inside the buildings,
Yeah.
and this is to change the lights, the street lights.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's number 8. Number 9, the DPW facility that they're building, there will need to be an easement granted for that utility to go on to that property and get electricity to that building. I think it's for natural gas and for electricity, so that's what that article is. 10 is the Institute Road layout. You'll actually have a public hearing on this shortly to lay out that roadway. It was never laid out. There was a long court battle relative to Institute Road of whether it was a public way or not.
Goes back about 14 years now.
Yeah, so you will have a hearing, you will lay it out, and it'll go to town meeting. Obviously, they need that access to build that subdivision, and part of the zone change later on in this whole warrant will be a village mixed-use component on Route 30 that abuts the land that's gonna be residentially built by Alfonso. We've had plenty of discussions with him to make sure that that land is both housing and commercially developed. Easements on Main Street, this is South-Grafton. This has to do with the easements that need to be done for the Mass DOT program we're doing all along Main Street in South-Grafton. There are 150 properties. There are 250 to 275 either temporary takings or permanent takings, mostly dealing with utility poles, guide wires, and overhead wires. So if overhead wires go over your property, you have to do this whole evaluation with 2 different appraisal firms. It's a nightmare, but we're doing it. But you need permission from town meeting to take those properties. So we're giving the Board of Selectmen the authorization through this article to allow you to enter into those negotiations. Our first ask for those people along the way will be to gift it to the town so we can make those improvements. If they don't want to gift it, they're entitled to the fair market value of whatever the taking is, and that's what the assessment will tell us, or the appraisal will tell us. Chapter 90 funds will be used for that, can be used for that, legally used for that, so that's what the funding source will be when we get there. I don't know what the value is now because I haven't done the appraisal. But I talked to appraisers today for a price on what it'll take. But that's the second step. The first step is to get approval for you to negotiate.
Do you have a ballpark?
I have none.
So could it be hundreds of thousands of dollars?
They're tiny slivers along pieces of sidewalk. There's no
All right.
There's no pieces of houses that go missing. We're just trying to make the road linear. And to move those poles to make it safe travel way, that's all we're talking about.
Okay, just making sure, because
We have the plan, if you wanted to look at it and kind of guess for yourself, but I'm not even gonna
no,
have it.
how do you even begin? But, okay.
Article 12 will be the purchase of the Robinson property, so that spells out, the 475,000 coming from CPC, the guy just covered. And 13, 14, 15, 16 are all CPC for the balance of those areas of funding that they talked about. The 10% needs to go to affordable housing, open space, recreation, and historic preservation. So that's what that is. 17, this is the article that allows for the 43D priority development and expedited permitting for Worcester Street.
Why is that one in Article 5 on the special and not the regular?
5.
Article 5 is the assessor's FY20 property revaluation.
I can answer that, because she's going to take existing funds from her fiscal year 19 budget and move it into an article that would go towards that,
Okay.
so we have to do that in a special.
And this proposed amendment to the Grafton zoning bylaw.
That's her 43B.
Yeah, 17.
Yeah, would that be, that's gonna be immediate, the impact's gonna be immediate, so it wouldn't go into the FY20 general?
No, well, because the 45 days that it takes the Attorney General to review,
Yeah,
I don't want the developers to have to wait.
gotcha.
So I want, because usually it's July 1 when new things, when you do things in the annual, I think of July 1 as the
Right.
date that it implements. I want this to implement now, so we don't have
Gotcha.
to wait.
Gotcha, okay.
17, is that it?
Did you have a question? I know you had gotten up. Was it on this?
It's
a combination of both, so we can cover the general meeting if you want, and I can go back to one or two questions I have from this one.
All right,
I don't mind either way.
all right.
So this, if it's okay with you and the ordering is okay, then that's what we'll bring to you next week to be signed. All right, so we'll stay with that for the special. I'll give you the annual. If you take one, pass it down, it'll be great. This combines two things, right? It's a warrant for the election that'll happen on the 21st of May. I'm trying to see. It lays out the membership for who's up and what the election ballot will read. And then the next is for the town meeting to be held at 7:30 on the 13th day of May. So that's at the high school. That facility is secured. Sound system is supposed to be perfect. Don't blame me, that's all I'm gonna tell you right now.
What about clickers? How are we doing with clickers?
Well, clickers are coming along. We are in a little bit of a dispute with the owner of the company relative to a licensing agreement for the additional clickers we purchased, but I'm fighting that battle as we speak, and then.
Yeah, the
he's
IT
testing.
committee has been testing the clickers for the last 6 months or so. They believe that they have figured out what happened at town meeting. It's an issue with spacing for the receiver, the box. It has to be front and center. There cannot be anything between the people using the clickers and that box that receives the clicker votes. So if you recall, I was sitting behind a curtain in the back, Ray and Ginny were in front of me. So in the tests that Dave has been doing with them sitting out front, and people from, up as high as in the back of the school auditorium, as long as that receiver is in front and there's nothing impeding it, it can receive the votes. We also have changed the batteries in all the clickers, so we're not sure if that was an issue, but it won't be, for sure. And we will have to talk to Ray about doing some sort of test at the beginning of town meeting and showing people, like putting the results on the screen, showing you voted, there's X number of you here, these are the results.
It's too bad that when you walk in, you don't get a number, right? So like if you're the number one, number two, and then that way we know how many people showed up to town meeting.
Well, there's different precincts, and I can't numeric
Yeah.
them. They can hand them out from the beginning of the box.
Or even so, like, right, I'm number one at precinct 5, and, someone else number one, precinct 2. You add those numbers up and you
Yeah.
know how many people we have.
I know, but people come and go all the time.
Yeah, you're not gonna get 100% of the votes every time, but when you're off by as many as we were off, for as many articles as we were off, there was a problem. So we're gonna do everything we can to show in May that that's not happening.
Did you tell the IT community, did they try hitting the reset button? Sometimes that,
I hit the reset button, so.
Unplug it.
you unplug it, turn it back on.
I was gonna say one thing on that I heard people commenting about, the clickers,
Yeah.
is one suggestion people had is that just the sheer number of people trying to use them at once in that auditorium wasn't a good test compared to how they might.
Oh, you gotta, he wants you to
Yep.
grab a microphone.
Sure.
You can sit, you don't have to stand,
Yeah,
you can sit,
just gotta
just
pick
use
one.
just use a microphone,
Sure. So.
and say who
Yeah,
you are.
Justin Wood, Garden Street. But so that one of the things that people had recommended is maybe asking the high school students while they're in school or after school to fill the auditorium, hand out clickers, have them test them a few times with actual people in the auditorium spread out wherever they wanted to sit. That would at least give a good representation on, hey, you can't have people anything between the clicker and the receiver. What if there's someone sitting in front of me? What if I'm holding it down by my leg with the seats in front of me? Those kind of things, a lot of phones with Wi-Fi and interruptions from that.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's been done. I just.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
methodology, David can,
Yeah, Dave Robbins should really speak to it, because he's done all of the testing on his own, volunteered his time, which is phenomenal. We did talk to them about wireless interference. We went back and forth with them for a while about it. We did determine that ultimately wireless interference is not what caused the issues in October. I think it was Dave who initially had the idea to maybe have high school students test them out. I don't know if that's something that we can do, but I know that he's talked about it. And you know, we will have to at some point get a large number of them in use at once to confirm that they are working before we hand them out at town meeting. So that is without a doubt on the agenda to do before May 13th.
Has Ray been included in on the loop of all this discovery?
No, not as of yet.
All right, so we're gonna bring him on board so he can.
Well, he just needs to know that we need to test the integrity of the system and display it for the people. He's,
Yeah.
he's,
At the end of the day, I mean, it's his meeting.
yeah, but
If he
he,
decides he doesn't want to use the clickers, I mean, if we
Right,
put too much time into this, check with him, make sure he's gonna use the clickers again.
well, you passed a bylaw using, allowing clickers to be used. So yeah, I think he's on board with the clickers because he knows.
We
that
didn't
there's-
mandate that they be used, we just allowed them to be used.
Yeah, yeah.
He can still say we don't.
Oh yeah, he can. He can. But he subscribed. He wanted them. He supports it.
That's
just wanna-
fine, I just want him part of
I
this
think you're right.
conversation.
Yeah, we'll bring them into the fold. For
Talking
sure.
about it as this meeting.
Well, we always meet with him before town meeting anyway, so I'm sure we can have that discussion.
Just when you use a clicker, you gotta be like my father, who used to like throw the signal at the television with the
Really,
the
though?
remote.
Yeah,
Like just
you gotta up,
you point.
pointing.
No, I go through
Yeah.
my cavities. You put it through the chin.
Trump says it causes cancer. I don't believe it.
Either way, all you need to do is have one good 35, 40-minute hand count, and then everybody's like, no, well, let's figure out these quicker things.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully.
Some of those were abysmal.
All right, so let's go through this warrant real quick.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Let me keep my phone from ringing. All right, so you're gonna hear reports. That's basically just not, accepting but not ratifying the annual town report, which will be available before town meeting, but will be available at town meeting. You'll have one Billy Cook, who will be the Nelson Park and Trust Memorial. And then the Blackstone Valley Operating Chair is Article 3. And then the interest and principal for their project is in Article 4. And those are all, factored into the budget. We know all those numbers. But again, we just have the standard language to raise and appropriate for both articles. Fiscal 20, Article 5 is the fiscal 20 budget, which you sent an email to Finance Committee yesterday or Friday.
No, last week.
I
about
don't know
the
when
town
they're,
insurance. I don't know when they're planning to
Okay.
vote, but we don't have any plans to change any numbers right now.
Okay, so the last time that we were presented with them, that's what it's gonna stay at. They're not.
Yeah.
We're not getting
Yeah,
anything
we had
more from
talked
the
about
insurance company.
Right,
Okay.
that's not changing right now.
well, there will be a
It
reduction.
may change.
Okay.
We did save money, but we're not moving it. Our plan was whatever we save, we're gonna move it into health insurance. From
Right.
town insurance. So leave it, we'll deal with it in October.
Okay.
Because it's not gonna be it's a de minimis amount in terms of,
Yeah.
it's negligible.
Okay.
6 is the FY 20 capital expenditure. 7's the transportation bond bill, which is chapter 90. 8 allows you to enter into contracts to spend money from chapter 90 on said contracts. In Article 9, you'll set spending limits for revolving accounts. We consolidated them all here, along with the use, who they're under, who controls them, and then the spending limit. Generally, that's not general fund money that's inside of there. They're raised from fees or other opportunities. Did we figure out the ones we adopted in the special? Do we have to
No, I
re-adopt
have
them
that
here?
note in your
All right, so
messaging.
you did,
May add
you did 3 for the school in the special, so they can start to use that money before July. We need to see if it needs to be included in here again as a reauthorization for fiscal 20. So that may be the only change you'll see when we get to, next week. Fire department insurance supplement, someone works here, part-time, volunteer, they get paid a fee, but they have a full-time job someplace else, they get hurt working for us. We have this fund set up, I think we've used it once since I've been here, to offset their workers' comp or 111F claim. FY 20, this is new, we've never had to do this before, but DOR regulations say that the cable fund needs to be voted as its own budget at town meeting, so that's what Article 11 does. And maybe for transparency's sake, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Generally, if they wanna do something with their monies they get from the franchise fee, they come to the Board of Selectmen, you sign a contract, we go spend the money. So now this has to lay out the expenses and the personnel expenses that'll be
Does that
derived
change?
from franchise fees.
Does that change, or is it just annually, voted on at town meeting for their budget?
Annually going forward, it'll be just an article just like this.
All right.
I may move it, having looked at this now, I may put it under 5 or 6. But this is all finance anyway, so it's fine to fall where it's falling now, unless the board has a druther. 12 is a, annual recurring for the treasurer collector to be able to borrow money. It's a housekeeping item, we do it every year. Unemployment compensation, people come, people go, they file claims. We have a company, UTMC, that if we don't think that they're entitled to benefits, we challenge them and we fight them, but when there are, we're on a pay-as-you-go, we're self-insured basically. Instead of taking 1% of payroll and paying it to the state, we wait to see what the claims are, and this is what the appropriation is that we think we're gonna need for fiscal 20. It's pretty much in line with every other year, in terms of the appropriation.
Yeah, it was significantly higher last year because we knew that the school department was planning on potentially having to lay people off. The impact wasn't as severe as we thought it was gonna be, and that's an account that rolls year to year, so we don't have to appropriate as much in FY 20.
14 is funding for WRTA services, that's a standard article. 15, sale of surplus property, we don't have any as of yet. You did change the bylaw, anything under 25,000 can just be an act of the board. Anything over needs to go to town meeting. We don't have anything right now, again, just a placeholder in the event that something came up before May. 16, the part-time economic development specialist. The funding issue we have with this now is we just don't have enough money to fund it, so we want to be able to continue it, but we're going to use free cash. And what'll happen is it'll be the second year of a pilot program for the economic development specialist, which is John Allen.
What did Pink Thumb say about this?
Say that one more time?
Did it respond to this particular article? At all? Did they say anything about it?
Finance committee?
Yeah.
No, and they really don't respond until they have a signed warrant.
Yeah, all right.
So
They're gonna have a hearing process.
yeah,
Yeah,
They still have to go through
No, I get that. It's just,
they'll certainly not want it to be done this way.
They won't want
There's
it,
no
yeah.
other,
no,
unless we want to
completely get it.
cut the health insurance to
I
the
just may be
minimum
missing a
and fund it.
correspondence.
I mean,
between somebody and
they are
somebody.
aware because they know that it was taken out, it was previously in the planning board budget and it's not in 20, so they know that it's not part of the FY 20 budget,
Right.
operating budget.
I mean, this is one of those things where we took it up a couple of years ago. Everybody thinks it's a fantastic idea, and as far as I know, everyone thinks John Allen is doing a great job. But it was an experiment as it came to FinCom a couple of years ago, and now it's no longer an experiment. Now this is something that we think we need, and John's doing a good job, so it's going to be ongoing. And this is another one of those things where part-time economic development specialists, couple police vehicles are things that probably ought to go on the operating budget that are now being paid for out of one-time cash, so it's something to keep an eye on.
It's gonna fall into
I
same
agree.
auspices.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
17 CPC, 18's the Pell Farm bond payment, 19 CPC, 20 CPC, 21, 22, 23. Those are all projects that have been vetted by community preservation and supported.
So if anybody has questions about those, I can do my best to answer.
Long-range IT, at Finance Committee's request a couple of years ago, we started to try to invest in our infrastructure because we have servers, we go to the cloud as much as we can. We use Gmail, some interface with Outlook, but there are some long-range IT-related items that we try to fund, and that's what this account does. We don't have a number as of yet because we'll look to either free cash or other existing appropriations to be able to funnel into this account that'll allow us to continue to maintain those IT needs of the town. Fire Department retirement account, so years of service upon retirement, people get $100 a year for their years of service. Is it $100 a year?
Yep.
And I think there's 2 or 3 that are eligible, so we'll look to fund that. We don't have an exact number at this time.
Jesus, it's only $100 a year,
Yeah,
and that's for. How do you qualify for that? You have to be ongoing full time, or
there
you on
is the length of service is verified by the chief, and then when they retire, they put their time in, so you don't have to worry about that.
no. What I'm saying is, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's
they put their
prior-
time in. They're only getting $100 a year. That's why I'm like,
Per
you know,
year of service.
Yeah, per year of service.
Per
Okay.
year
So if they had,
45 years.
$4,500.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll look to fund that through either the same method of existing appropriation or free cash. Fire hydrant, South Grafton Water District, we budgeted for these for whatever reason. I'll take the blame. I missed this in an adoption piece for our prior town meeting. These should have been on a warrant
Should've
to
been
be
on.
accepted, so they should have been on in May, October of last year. 27, we talked about these last week for 27 and 28 for the property tax exemption for veterans whose property has been conveyed to a trust. So Justin and Mary Oliver were here last week to talk about both of these articles. I actually talked about all three of them, with the senior work-off program, the Gold Star family, and then the conveyed to a trust. So 27, 28, and 29 are all related to abatements and exemptions through the assessor's office. And 30 is an amendment for the zoning bylaw, which I think we should bring Joe in if you want more detail on it. But all the rest of these are either proposed zoning amendments or citizens petition. One of the interesting last two on Article 38. Now, where is, 35 is interesting,
Wait,
to
somebody-
rename the Board of Selectmen to Select Board.
I didn't see 37.
We've been called worse.
And then 37, this is a petitioner's article, duly certified with enough signatures to allow for cultivation and product manufacturing in village mixed use in South Grafton inside that zone.
Should we as a board take a individual vote on the citizen ones and the planning board ones on whether or not or because we signed the warrant, it means that we approve everything?
No,
No.
No, we don't have to
You're-
approve
To
it.
give notice, your signature only acts as you're giving notice to the inhabitants of the community that you're considering these things. If you druther, you should take a separate vote supporting or not supporting any one of the articles.
Which
Yeah.
we've done in the past.
I think we
On
should.
some, yes. So that's the,
So did 37, did that get reviewed by the planning board?
he had an informal meeting with the planning board. They will have a hearing on it if they haven't already.
I think it's April 24th is when
Okay.
planning board and
So
FinCom are meeting about the planning board articles.
if they're covering that, that means we don't have to.
We don't have
Well-
to, but.
No, I know we don't have to, but for something like that,
Well, I mean, the role of planning, I mean, you guys have been
Somebody
on
should.
planning, so, they should be there to take comments from the public.
Yeah,
And then report out on it at a town meeting. If you want a different dive,
I'm just
Well, I
really
just wanna
nervous.
make
It
sure it
hasn't
gets done.
really been vetted, so that article makes me a little nervous, but
Well,
that's a personal.
if the planning board wasn't going to give it some diligence, a public hearing process, we should step in and do it ourselves.
sure. If planning, yeah, I guess you're right. If planning's taking care of it, then leave it to them.
But it is under their, I mean, it's their stuff.
But maybe 35, 36, and 38, we should talk about and maybe vote on as a board. Not necessarily tonight, but just at some point, before town meeting.
well, for the purposes of signing it, whenever, I'll make sure Joe gets here. If he can't get here for the 19th, we'll have him in afterwards, just to explain them. We'll do a town meeting warrant piece probably next week, right after you sign it, just to give people enough information. Then we cut away to Joe to do his own thing on his separate articles. And then if we need more information from CPC, we'll have CPC do something.
So is 38 basically the styrofoam?
Yeah, to
is that
ban
what that
on
is?
styrofoam, yeah.
But
Okay.
we can't, they are proposing fees and penalties here, right? We can't actually do that.
You can, you just don't have unless you're adopting a non-criminal disposition, which you are under section 6, you can levy those fines and fees. On
Where you
page 11, the citizen's petition, the top of that page,
Oh,
6,
goes
all
to
subsequent
6.
offenses penalized by non-criminal disposition is provided at MGL 4021D.
Wait, that,
You can adopt it by individual bylaw instead of giving a blanket community-wide non-criminal disposition.
can you really?
Yeah,
Good for us. All right, well,
you should do it town-wide, because otherwise your bylaws are
Are we,
useless.
is this the same
how
crew
long
who
have we
did the
gone
plastic
with our
bags?
bylaws being useless?
Yes.
Great.
So
All right.
you had questions?
When was the last time that fight was made? non-criminal disposition?
When it was
When you
what?
first
The
were on
pitch?
the board, I feel
Yeah,
like
it was like 5 years ago, wasn't it?
right.
Yeah, it was a while.
The dogs.
And how'd that go? We got crushed.
Yeah, I think we got crushed.
I don't,
On wait
I
for
don't
what?
remember losses.
Non-criminal
Non-criminal
disposition.
disposition.
Oh, that was on the park.
You remember the losses?
No,
I don't remember
that's-
losses.
Well, what did we have?
Ones to give that to.
I remember
Yeah.
all of them.
Well, what about the plastic bags? Is it same language or
No, there's no penalties or fees associated with it.
no?
I
No.
think there are, but we never worked out whether it was the Board of Health or the town administrator to enforce.
But
I think that's what it was.
But they,
Yeah.
but everybody
Same people who
complied,
did
so
that
thankfully.
plastic
we
bag
don't
thing.
Yeah,
have
but aren't they a committee?
They're I don't know if they're a committee.
They were a
They're
committee,
not an
because they-
official Grafton committee. I think they're just a group of
They came in to
citizens.
talk to us when we did the plastic bag thing. They're not coming in to talk to us on this one.
They have
They reached out.
offered, they did go, they spoke to EDC, about the impact on businesses, and they have offered to come in and talk to the
Oh,
board.
then we definitely need to bring them in, because
Okay.
planning board's not gonna pick that one up. Yeah. They were a delight last time they were here anyways, so that was a good conversation. But if they wanna garnish our
Well,
support,
also too. I mean, for the
get here.
maybe the same with 35 and 36 too. I mean, I know 36 was Matt's, right?
Yep,
Matt Often's. And who did 35? I mean, we don't. I mean, think
that's
that's.
Bill Yeomans.
Yeah.
No, it
No,
was
it's
Barry.
Barry Smith.
Barry Smith.
Osbury.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I'd definitely bring him in too.
So we're gonna be the Grafton Select Board. Cool.
Well, town meeting.
If town meeting approves it.
Just, will you send her a note? for me?
Yes, what do you have?
Invite her in
So-
for the 16th?
Can we
I just had a few minor, well, maybe minor questions, but on the special meeting, Article 8, the streetlights,
Yep.
the thing I'm not clear on based on what's in this draft article is, we might be getting a grant, which I didn't even see in this article at all for the first, but you mentioned it, is any money coming directly out of the town money? Are
It
we
could
raising
be.
it?
There could be. That's why the article's written.
Yep.
Because I need, A, authorization to take the lights, and
Yep.
B, if the grant doesn't cover the whole exchange to LED, we'll have to fund some of it from,
And is
Town
the
money.
expectation that in changing to LED will be spending less as a, operating budget for the lights and going
Oh, yeah.
forward? And how much, if we don't get a grant, do we know any information about how much we're gonna save over how long, how long?
if
will
we
it
don't
take
get
to
the
pay
grant,
back?
we're not gonna do the lights.
Okay,
So that's the first answer. It is probably a 60% savings in electric bills. So the return on investment, I don't have the sheet in front of me, but we know what the cost is to run the lights today. We know what the cost will be to run those lights with LED. So for what we think our portion is gonna be, it's a 3-year return on investment.
and is that for all the town lights or just a portion?
It's every street light
Okay,
in the community that's in the public right of way that is non-metered specifically for public safety and public ways.
alright. And my other, question that I don't think that I need to ask here now, rather than, wait, is just the Article 9, the regular town meeting, is the, spending limits for revolving accounts. I see, in your table on the next page of the draft warrant, but same article, is 4 or 5 for the school department. The council on aging is in the upper and lower section. Is there a distinction between each of those line items in particular? Because I see, council on aging is 35,000 on both.
Yeah, the state law sets these spending limits, so that's why they're all different. So,
That's money they bring in, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
they're from
so-
user fees, donations.
So I think
Yeah.
your
Rental.
question is, there might be different accounts, so for school
Oh.
department
Yeah.
has different accounts, cause their money is collected for different things.
Yeah, I just was unsure why I see the same thing multiple times.
I think they just have a couple of different accounts, yep,
Okay.
good question.
And then, where is it? The Article 24 of the regular town meeting, just the IT long-range account, is there any description anywhere or going to be for the town meeting on what in particular projects we're thinking of having this fund? I know I read in the budget about a lot of the town departments moving their IT budget from their individual department spend to a general thing for the town. But is that what this is, covering? Is there anything particular?
Yeah, so, a couple of things, we did consolidate all IT into that single MIS GIS budget in FY 20, so there's no more, siloing all the IT expenses in different departments. And then the second part of that is this long-range account. And a lot of what we're gonna request to fund at town meeting is going to be to do a replacement of a lot of computers in town hall that are currently running software that we know is gonna end support in January of 2020. So the majority of the money that we're asking for to spend in FY20 on those machines will come out of the long-range IT account. Up until now, we've been spending out of the MIS budget, but, you know, we have increased costs for the permitting system that's coming online in 20. That's part of the MIS budget, so we're trying to sort of supplement that with the long-range IT account to make those replacements in 20.
All right. Thank you. I think that's all I have for this week.
Can I just ask, because he brought up, thank you for coming with your questions. You have two more sessions
Yes.
in which you,
Yeah, so we'll have 2 more outreach meetings.
yes.
The next one will be on April 18th at 7 PM. We heard all the feedback about not giving enough time for the first one, so we do apologize if people weren't informed about it, but we've tried to do a lot of outreach to get people to the 18th, which will be here, 7 PM, and then there will be another one on April 25th, 7 PM, and that will be in North Grafton at the Nelson Library. And then in addition to those, Tim and I will do a regular town meeting warrant TV special.
And I
Cannot
will
wait.
say, as
Pay-per-view.
I will say, as a community member, I read the concerns from the first one, but people are generally happy with the notice and the spread of the new one that I'm noticing anyway.
That's good.
Quick question on Article 11. Just a quick second. Grafton Cable Television budget, maybe this is a brief aside, but I keep reading scary things in the Globe and New York Times about funding for cable access. As we talked about last year, and for the folks who may not know at home, when you cord cut, right now your cable bill comes and you have a cable bill and then you've got your internet bill on your phone for whatever, $5, $10 a month. As you cord cut and you go to Hulu, HBO, and Netflix, we don't get a percentage of your internet bill, even though you buy them in a package. We just get the percentage of your cable bill that gets funneled to your local government to provide for cable access. So when people are cord cutting, we're getting less money for cable access. And now, if I'm understanding this correctly, the present administration is maybe underfunding its commitment federally to local cable access. Do we have anything to worry about going forward, number one, with the local cable access budget, that we might have to consider increasing our operational obligations to it? Number two, the capital improvements that we're making going forward with the project across the parking lot.
I think those concerns are real, given the current administration. And I don't know about their funding. I think that they support any kind of release of fees and obligation from those vendors that provide that service over telephone poles. Since we just renewed with Verizon and we're gonna renew with Charter for 5 years, the debt service for that building is going to be covered. If everybody left today and went to their device some other way, yeah, we would have to find a way to fund that 500,000 that we're gonna borrow, 600,000. But they have enough in reserves to cover a majority of that project. And the operational dollars that they give us quarterly is enough to fund the budget that'll be passed, hopefully proposed and passed in May for fiscal 20. Hopefully in 2 years, if things change nationally, we won't have that concern, but that's been on the horizon of the FCC and every other lobbying group for Comcast and AT&T and everybody else. They want to get rid of that fee because they just don't want to have to deal with it.
And we want a piece of it. We want a piece of the internet fee. We don't want a piece of the cable.
Yeah, no, you want the whole bundle.
And that's what, I mean, to your point too, I think we need more lobbyists on the other side, to fight for these towns and to fight for cable access, because without that, I don't think it's ever gonna happen.
For both sides. I mean, we have all these utility poles that are in the public right of way, but we're providing a service to our residents because they, so it's like, it's tough. And we didn't charge the electric company because everybody wants electricity, God forbid.
Right.
So I don't think we have an immediate concern. I think 2 years will tell.
Yeah.
But I think we're fine for the funding of that project, the operation of cable, if those franchise fees went away. If you want to continue with the broadcast you have now, you'll need to use general fund money to fund it.
Okay.
I hope that never happens. Bob asked you, he was very upset.
Just so you know, the operating budget for for cable, I believe is like 137,000. That's inclusive of their portion of the debt, that they will have to make a payment on that borrowing in 20.
So does that go before FinCom too?
It does.
It will
It
because
will
it's
as a
part of the
warrant.
warrant, yeah.
But only because it's part of the warrant.
Well, no, moving forward, now they have to have their own budget set up. So
Yeah.
that'll start.
So yeah,
going
moving
from
forward
FinCom.
they will,
It will.
but before, they never did. They took in the 5%, they got the 125 and the 300,000 from both companies, and they just spent at the pleasure of the Board of Selectmen and their recommendation to you.
No, we get some good worthwhile projects out of that particular fund.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, I'm just saying it's one more thing that you really have to put in the whole process.
Yes.
Any other discussion on the special town meeting, annual town meeting warrants?
So we don't need to vote for this until next week.
Yeah, we'll sign it next week, yeah. The FY 2020 budget, any questions?
Kinda covered that too, didn't we?
I think we did.
Yeah, I don't have any other update on that. I covered it with the town insurance.
So meeting minutes?
There are none.
Nope, so I will take a motion to
Wait
adjourn.
a second. I was told I had to wait for executive session to chat
Oh,
about
do
something.
you wanna talk about that?
Do.
Okay, so we will enter into executive session.
What's the purpose?
For
Land.
negotiation?
Yeah,
Oh,
all right, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Are they still down there?
Is that good enough?
Second is fine.
Motion made and seconded
by roll call.
to enter into executive session for the purposes of land negotiation by roll call vote.
Spinny,
Thomas, I.
President,
Hannah, aye. To discuss these matters in open session will compromise the town's position and needs to be discussed in executive session. The chair so declares. We will re-enter, or we'll just adjourn from executive session. So, good night, everybody.